get started. Can you see my screen? All
Yes.
right, you should be. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So, first and foremost, hold on, I can't see where I'm at. Okay. All right, so this webinar is called Publish Now or Forever Hold Your Peace. And I wanted to share this particular information at this particular time because there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot going on in technology. Technology is advancing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about just kind of what the nature of the publishing industry looks like right now, the importance of Black people prioritizing publishing in this particular season, in this particular time we're in, and then also just kind of what is happening with the technology advancements like AI, artificial intelligence, and all of that good stuff. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but if there are any questions, like I said, put it in the chat and I will address them once we move through it. So I like to engage too. I kind of like to do the communal engagement. But since it's a small group today, we're just gonna keep it moving. If you want to respond, you can. But I wanted to pose the question: do you think that it's important for Black people to publish and protect our intellectual property? Why or why not? So if you want to come off mute and answer that question, you can. If you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay too. But I just wanted you to kind of sit with that question for a moment. Take a moment to just kind of think about what that looks like, what that means. And while you do that, I'm going to talk about the stats. So as you can see here, we have some statistics, and this was taken or this was kind of captured from the 2017 data that kind of covered the publishing industry. And so if you look, the overall industry is overwhelmingly white. In 2017, it was 79% white, Caucasian, with 4% Black, African American, 1% Native American, 7% Asian, 6% Hispanic, 1% Middle Eastern, and 3% biracial or multicultural. That was publishers. So the actual people who run the publishing companies. And then there was a snapshot at the looking at the editorial departments within those publishing companies. And you'll see here that it was 82% white, only 2% Black, and these are like editors. These are the people who advocate for authors, who go out and seek, the type of content that they choose to publish, and who work with authors through from the beginning to the end of the process. You got 1% Native American, 7% Asian, 4% Hispanic, 1% Middle Eastern, 3% biracial, multicultural, or multiracial. And I found it was very interesting that even in America, with Black people, us being kind of the foundational people on this continent and playing such a big role in it being what it is today, it's just interesting to also see that Asians and Hispanics both um, kind of supersede us in terms of their representation in the publishing industry. So also I utilized one of the artificial intelligence apps, and so the most popular right now is Chat GPT. And so what I did was ask the question to Chat GPT to kind of see what it was going to say about the statistics of African Americans in the publishing industry. And so it gave me a 2019 kind of survey that was conducted by a multicultural children's book publisher. And so the numbers have shifted just a little bit, with it being 76% instead of 79% white. Only 4% is African American still. Um, and also, let's see, in executive positions, there's 70%, 78% white, 3% African American. In editorial positions, 74% white, 5% African American. In sales positions, 71% white, and 6% are African American. And then it gave me a little overview saying these statistics show that African Americans are significantly underrepresented in the publishing industry, particularly in leadership and in decision-making roles. This lack of diversity can contribute to a lack of diverse perspectives and stories being published and promoted in the industry. Um, so yeah, that's a lot. Before I get into just kind of what that means for us as Black people, Black authors, Black writers, those of us who have interest in publishing, I didn't introduce myself. So also, I want to just give that introduction. So my name is Nia Sade, the literary revolutionary, and I am a writing coach. I am an English language arts instructor. And I'm also a publishing strategist. I have worked with over 100+ writers over the last 5 years in business. I have had the privilege of publishing or partnering to help over 50 Black authors write and publish their books within the last 5 years. I took a couple of years off during the pandemic and kind of these last 2 years since the pandemic. And so this is actually my first webinar coming back into the mix, which is why, it's just us right now, but that's cool. Um, so yeah, I've done quite a bit from the independent publishing perspective. But what I have done a lot of is just kind of really study what the traditional publishing scene looks like, to see how it can be either adapted, the areas that work or are beneficial to us as a community, but also, leaving the things that don't necessarily work for us. And, a lot of that creativity that goes into putting a book together is typically lost in that traditional publishing journey. So my role as a publisher that partners with authors is to take them through basically the self-publishing process, but having that coaching support, and being able to provide just information that they may not know readily or may not be able to just kind of get from Google. Just using my experiences over the last 5 years and publishing over 50+ authors to help and support that. So I wanted to pause to just give that introduction because I didn't take the time in the beginning, but let's keep going. So what do these stats mean? What do these stats mean? So a couple of things that came to mind when I thought about just what the nature of these stats mean. One, obviously is the publishing industry is overwhelmingly white. And what that means for us as a people is that it affects what material is published, how it is distributed, and then how our narratives are shaped. So we know that white authors and scholars have kind of been notorious for coming into our communities to learn from our scholars, to take their notes on our knowledge, our history, our inventions, and then bring it back to their community, and then bring it back to us to whitewash. They whitewash it, and then they bring it back to us to sell it. And you can see evidence of that, which kind of just what's happening in the academic space right now as it relates to critical race theory, the arguments and the back and forth in in the Senate offices and everything around, just the nature of what is being expressed in the U.S. history books. And so just an example of that, I'll share an article that I was reading from The Guardian. It was basically talking about just, U.S. textbooks today are teaching slavery as Black immigration. So they're not telling the truth of what slavery meant or how it came about, but they're, writing in these textbooks that are being utilized in classrooms that, we came over here willingly. And so this is just an example of what happens when we are not overly represented or even, equally represented in the publishing industry. And let me go back to my original screen. Another example of that, or another just example of what this means is, in addition to the whitewashing and selling our information right back to us, there have been several instances of just information, knowledge, inventions, things that were done long before kind of white people got a hold of it or kind of knew what we were doing. And I use spirituality as an example of one of the things that, you know, they went over into our land and kind of took what they could see. And so, for example, you have in ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, right? Um, what we know is astrology today came from the walls in the pyramid in ancient Kemet. And so they had, white scholars and writers and authors and all the things come over and study under these priests and study under these ancient Kemetic people who put in the work and kind of articulating what was happening in the sky with astrology and or astronomy. And so they took all that information, brought it back to Europe, put their spin on it, called it astrology, and now they're selling it back to us. So all of these are examples of just what happens when we're not in control of our narrative, when we're not in position to be the ones to publish certain material, to copyright certain material, to put our name on it, to put our stamp on it. Um, and then, of course, people steal things every day. So when we don't publish, when we don't copyright, when we don't protect our work, we don't really have a defense. And so I also wanted to just highlight there was this sister, Sophia Stewart, who was she was the writer and the creator of The Matrix. So the film The Matrix, it was a Black woman who wrote that. And while she had her copyright, um, she didn't have the legal defense. She couldn't put all of her money into the defense. She didn't really have a strong support system. She didn't have things in place to really protect her work, or even defend her work. And so that put her in a position where she lost the credit, she lost the recognition, and ultimately lost hella money, you know, um, from that contribution that was stolen. So when I just think about why Black people, why we in particular need to prioritize this, it's almost like it's a part of the art of war, in my opinion. And not to say that we are not in times where we've progressed in terms of just being in a better position and as a people and being able to have certain luxuries and things that our ancestors didn't have the privilege of having. There's still a lot that we don't necessarily have, um, or have what do I want to say? We don't necessarily have the mass support or the mass organized effort to be able to compete on a global level with you know those people, those white folks, those Hispanics, those Asians, because they all outnumber us. So beyond the stats, let's keep going. Beyond the stats, we are seeing more of us defining ourselves as experts in our respective fields through publishing books, but like I said, we are still outnumbered. Two, we live in an economic society that simply requires us to have multiple streams of income in order to thrive and not just survive. So, for me, publishing books provides another stream that can create continuous passive income for years to come. And we live in a day and age where so many people have access to the tools to just put a book together, but we have a lot of books going out that don't really have substance. And then we also have a lot of books that are full of substance, but they're not reaching the masses in the way that they could be. In this day and age, books are taking the place of business cards when we're seeking out speaking engagements, pitching programs, sponsorships, getting in certain doors. People want to see evidence of your expertise beyond what they see on a social media platform or a website. And while social media, has really brought attention to a lot of unsung people we wouldn't normally know. You have the opportunity to go viral and become seen and become known and all those things with social media. People do look at your website before they choose to hire you or book you and all of those things. But what I've recognized over the last maybe decade is those who have books, whether whoever you're pitching to has read your book or not, just knowing that you have a published something published under your name gets you in certain doors, allows you to come to certain tables that you wouldn't necessarily get just off of the strength of your business card, or just off of the strength of your name, or what your 30-second elevator pitch. So yeah, if you're in a position where you are an expert, or even maybe you're not an expert, but you're very knowledgeable about a specific subject matter, or you have a firsthand experience with a particular life lesson or subject matter, this puts you in a space of authority. And so um, that can come in handy with how you pitch yourself and put yourself out there, and be open to opportunities that become available. And then we are also responsible for what our children and future generations consume in terms of content, information, history, lessons, etc. We live in a day and age where media propaganda is force-fed down our children's throats, and we're often reactive when we become aware that they've been exposed to content that we don't necessarily agree with. So not only do we have to step up our game with protecting them from certain things that they're exposed to or that they consume, but we also have to counteract that with creating and distributing more content, more books, more materials that is in alignment with what we desire them to learn or to embody. And so, as an educator, I strongly, strongly believe that this is one of the solutions, is that we have to outnumber the content that is going out in the world. So when I see any Black person with a message that is, positive, or even, may not necessarily be positive, but you got an audience for your particular message. It's important that we take ourselves as seriously as they take themselves, and we utilize what we have to be able to push out more and solidify ourselves, not for necessarily their recognition, but for our own elevation as a people, and for our own protection of our children and the generations that follow us. So now I want to kind of shift into what is happening in the tech space and how it can be useful. So I have been listening to quite a few podcasts over the last couple of months. I listen to Earn Your Leisure is one of the podcasts I like to listen to, as well as High Level Conversations. And these podcasts you can find on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify or Google, wherever you listen to a podcast. But there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of debate around just the rise of AI, and how it's putting people out of business, how it is putting people out of jobs. Um, and one of those career fields that has been threatened are, artists and writers. And so we saw with all those pictures that came out, the avatars that Lenza created, there's been a whole lot of AI art that's been on social media. And so much, it's been so good that oftentimes people don't even realize that what they're looking at is not a real person. They're looking at, artificial art. And so it's also affecting those in the writing industry, or those who have jobs that, writing is a big part of what they do. Because now you have apps that can write for you. You have softwares and programs where all you have to do is share a couple of words, and it can write out a whole paragraph, or write out a whole essay, write out a whole book if you use it, strategically. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. First, what is artificial intelligence? So according to Britannica, artificial intelligence is the ability of the digital computer or computer-controlled robot to perform tasks commonly associated with intelligent beings. The term is frequently applied to the project of developing systems endowed with the intellectual processes characteristic of humans, such as the ability to reason, discover meaning, generalize, or learn from past experience. So, it's kind of self-explanatory. Basically, AI, if we were to call it robots, that's what it is. So you have, computers that can operate like humans. And there are apps that have been active for a while now. One that is most commonly known is this one down here at the bottom right, Grammarly, right? We've been seeing commercials and, ads about Grammarly for at least, 3 or 4 years now, 5 years maybe. And so Grammarly particularly is one of those AI companies that helps to edit written material. It's made it so easy and so convenient for students these days to get away with not knowing how to structure sentences, not know how to provide proper punctuation, not know how to capitalize. I have been really struggling just looking with my students, working with my students, my high school students, my middle school students. Um, they have been, especially those in the public school system, because they all have access to these computers from the school system. That's one of those features that they can get away with. And so Grammarly was very strategic with their whole rollout. And that's one of the ones that we are most commonly aware of. But there are also different other AI programs and softwares that I've just kind of become privy to, and I've been kind of testing out to learn what they offer. Because I recognize, while on one hand it can seem as a threat to the average human when you have these softwares available, to companies or to audiences. But when I think of just the people that I work with, which is authors and entrepreneurs, um, these things can come in handy. And so I want to talk a little bit about what each of them offer, so that if you find yourself in a position where you're stuck with maybe writer's block, or if you find yourself needing to do research on a specific subject matter that you want to include in your book, but you don't necessarily have the time to do the deep digging, or don't necessarily have you know the bandwidth for real to really take a subject to the depths of where you want to take it. You can utilize these, you know, AI tools to support that and to do that heavy lifting for you. So one of the ones that I have been using is this logo over here, Chat GPT. And so um, it's an app where you can just ask it a question. You can type in a couple of words and it will write a whole essay for you if you want. Um, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. At first, it was just like, this is scary. First of all, it's scary because it's like, wow, like you don't like the future of this world is like you don't have to really do no work because these softwares can do the work for you. But when you think of it from the perspective of maximizing your time, your energy, your effort, and even money, these things may come in handy if we use it correctly. So um, I wasn't able to put all of the notes and everything on the slide. I just wanted to show the logo so that you can kind of see if you've seen them before, or if you happen to see them in the future, then you kind of have an idea of what it does. But I'm going to just share some of my notes, which is not on the slide, so you just gotta just listen and take notes. So you got Chat GPT, which is an idea generator. It provides short form writing like blogs, articles, emails, etc. It can be used to springboard ideas for longer form writing like books. Then you have Jasper AI, which is like a story writer. And this particular app generates ideas and templates for writing novels. So if you're writing fiction, if you're writing a children's book, if you're, wanting to get into your creative bag, you can, utilize Jasper AI, and it gives you templates that you can work with and that you can work around to help you pull the story out. You have Pseudo-Write, which I believe is this little icon over here to the bottom left. And so Pseudo-Write is an AI-powered writing program that is designed to simplify the novel writing process. So this also works with novels, fiction. It uses natural language processing, machine learning algorithms to assist writers by suggesting relevant keywords, synonyms, and other writing tips. So this particular AI app, I haven't really gotten a chance to play around with this one, but this is definitely one that I want to try, simply because it operates using, it really helps you to not say the same words in your writing. So like if you find yourself being repetitive, or if you find that you don't your vocabulary is not as, elaborate as it can be, and you're using small words, or words that are not um, super descriptive, this particular app can help you tap into those words that you may not be thinking to use, because you're just trying to, tell your story, or just share your message using the language that you would normally use. Then you have Writer, which is a powerful AI novel writing software that can help you develop new ideas and storylines. It's based on a network that has been trained on over 500,000 stories. So a lot of these, obviously, AI is a computer, so it's generating sometimes regurgitated content. They have ways to, manipulate the wording and the language so that it comes off as unique. Or when they give you, suggestions, or for example, ChatGPT, when it gives you an essay back after you've asked a question, it's kind of like they've taken all these different words and all these different messages and all this different information from on the web and crafted something for you to work with, or to, use as a springboard. And so these are just a couple. You have Anywhere. This isn't necessarily an app that you would probably want to use for writing an entire book, but this helps for like writing copy or writing like blogs. So when it comes time for promoting the book, or when it comes time for sharing, you know, that you have a book coming out and getting people excited, this will be an app to use to kind of help you use your copywriting skills to be able to sell and to promote and to um, market what comes up. So, all in all, with AI, right? There's its pros and its cons. When you think about it from the standpoint of just what's morally right, a lot of people may see con in that. But we live in it's 2023. Technology is going to continue to advance. We're going to continue to see more things that we don't necessarily feel is natural. However, we have to figure out how to utilize it for in our best interest, while also moving with integrity. And so I have just been playing around with these different apps and seeing what feels right. But I definitely have personally been able to get a lot more done um, from writing ebooks and writing out emails and, writing out content to go on social media, just things that I personally need as a one person entrepreneur, or, a one woman business. These things almost serve as like assistant. So it can be utilized in multiple lanes, not just with writing a book, but these particular ones that I share are good apps to look at if you are struggling with finishing the book or starting the book. Or if you find yourself just in that space where you need a little push, but you don't really know what to say, which that happens when you're in the writing process. So now I want to kind of shift gears and just talk about publishing. And I know I'm moving fast, so I'm gonna take a moment, take a little breath, because we at the 30-minute mark. And I'm gonna go for another 15 minutes, and then I want to allow for questions before closing out. All right, so for publishing, I want to just kind of talk a little bit about how to plan for publishing your book. Um, a lot of times people are just kind of approaching the writing process with, I have to just finish writing, I just have to focus on the writing, but they're not necessarily considering everything that comes after. And if you're not necessarily trying to uh, get signed, or strike a publishing deal with a traditional publishing company, you have to think about what's going to happen once the book is done before you get to that point. And so I wanted to just kind of break down what the differences are between the various publishing mediums. So first and foremost, you have traditional publishing, which is what we most commonly know. Um, the traditional publishing space, the way it works is write a let like once you have a book concept and you've written out a draft, or you at least have half of your book kind of written together. In the past, folks would send a query letter to a traditional publishing company that they're interested in. And in that letter, you're basically letting them know like what your book is about and why they should, give you a deal, why they should take the book and sell the book on your behalf. Um, and what has happened back in the day, it used to be a lot easier to just strike a publishing deal because there was a need for writers. There wasn't social media to be able to easily identify who were writers. So that whole query process was a common thing, sending the letter and waiting around for a response. Oftentimes, that query response turnaround could be 9 to 12 to 16 to 18 to 2 years, 18 months to 2 years that you may receive a response back. And so I think that it's because of that long process to getting a response from traditional publishing companies that self-publishing kind of came to a rise. It was like, okay, we're not going to wait around anymore. We're not about to, wait around for 18 months to 2 years just to get a rejection letter. And so often that was kind of what was happening in our community. It's like, because the publishing space is over 70% white, you have so many publishers and people in executive positions and editors who couldn't find the value in our material. And of course, we know we have our honorary, our literary revolutionaries, what I call them, our ancestors who paved the way, like the Langston Hughes and the Maya Angelou's and all of the people who were in the Renaissance era. You had this rise, and we had these moments, these waves, whether it was in the Harlem Renaissance era or the Black arts movement, where our work was highlighted. But oftentimes they had to move really collectively in order for different writers to get some sort of recognition. So anyway, traditional publishing companies, you had to go through the whole query process. You had to wait around for a response. And once you get that response, you get offered a deal. And so that deal could look like they're going to pay you in advance of, $15,000 up front, or depending on how popular you are or how in demand your book is, or how, in demand the subject matter is, you could get anything from $5,000 advance to, a $500,000 advance. Oftentimes those higher end advances come from people who actually have a name or a well-known brand. So think celebrities, think public figures. So that's traditional publishing. You can still very much go that route. I'm not sure if things have necessarily changed in terms of what the querying process is like, but I am aware that in this day and age, one of the big factors that traditional publishing houses look at is whether or not you have a following, because they don't necessarily want to put too much money into the marketing. They're expecting people to have some sort of an audience already that's going to guarantee some sales wherein they won't have to necessarily fork out too much money in the marketing dollars. So that's traditional publishing. Now we have self-publishing, obviously, which came as a response to people getting rejections, people not getting picked up by different traditional houses, people getting fed up, becoming fed up with the wait process. So not only do you have to wait, often months to years at a time, but you also don't necessarily have creative control when you're in the traditional space. Um, because what people don't understand is when you take that advance and you sign that contract, you're basically becoming an employee, if you will, of that traditional publishing house. You are signing over your intellectual property. You don't own it. So the copyright is going to be in that publishing house name. It's not in your name. So you don't own the work anymore. It's almost like you were paid. You are a writer for hire. And so with self-publishing, a lot of people who started to gather and rally around this whole self-publishing movement is that they wanted to have that creative control. They wanted to be able to, take their book from start to finish the way that they wanted it to be. They wanted to own their work and own their rights so that they could continue to get royalties long after, the book was published. So self-publishing is one of those things that, came as a response, and it's typical, and it's really just the process of you going through, finding your own editor, finding your own designer, or learning those skills yourself so that you can put up a high quality book. Um, Finding your own printer, investing your own dollars into the printing process. And then, of course, setting aside your own budget for marketing and promoting and touring and all the things that comes with getting your book out there and letting people know that there is a book to purchase. So self-publishing is not for the weak. Self-publishing is one of those things where if you are a natural born like hustler, or you have a hustling mindset, or you're able to attract abundance easily because you put yourself out there comfortably, then self-publishing is a good run for you. If you want to have total control over your creative process, and if you want to just own your material and have full rights so that you're always, making money or have the opportunity to make money from it, then self-publishing is the right route for you. But self-publishing comes with a lot of legwork because you are now not only operating as the author, but you are operating as the publisher, as the editor, as the CEO of the whole operation. You have to either learn what needs to be done in each quote unquote department to producing the book, or you have to be in position to find the people and hire the people. So that's self-publishing versus traditional publishing. Partner publishing is really a term that I coined. I don't know if anybody was saying that before I started doing it, but I'm also not naive to say that it didn't. Somebody might have been saying it somewhere. But partner publishing is really when when an author partners with an established someone who has experience with publishing. It can be another author, it can be an editor, or it can be someone who has a publishing company like myself. So I offer a service called partner publishing, wherein someone who wants to have sole exclusive rights over all of their work, wants to have total creative control, wants to have all of the benefits of self-publishing, but doesn't necessarily want to go through the legwork of having to find their own editor, find their own graphic designer, find their own printer, you know, file their own copyright, file with the Library of Congress, secure their own ISBN. Whoever doesn't necessarily want to do all of the legwork, they would hire someone like me who would do that process for them. And so it's basically an exchange. We're working together on the book. You are bringing your creativity to it, your intellectual property to it. You're sharing what your vision is, and then I take that and I create and strategize a plan to deliver so that you have the experience that you would like to have as a new author, or even if you have books already. If you find that you've done self-publishing before, but that was a lot of work and you don't want to do it by yourself anymore, you would then bring me into the mix, or anyone who offers this type of service. So, partner publishing is essentially self publishing or independent publishing, but with someone who is experienced in the legwork so that you're not making mistakes, or you don't find yourself in a position where, you don't reach the heights that you could have if you had a little more knowledge or a little more resources. So I just wanted to touch on the differences between the two or the three before I tap into just kind of how I can support. Um, yeah, how I can support you in this journey. So I have a couple of ways that I can support because, like I said, for me, making sure that encouraging Black folks to publish is not just that's my business and that's just that's my way of making money, but it's most importantly, this is, I truly believe that I am called to assist our people on a global scale to leaving a greater legacy beyond just monetary value. beyond just land or beyond, it's all these things, all this rhetoric around, leaving generational wealth and leaving all of these things. And while all of these things are important, I think in addition to that, what's also important is being able to leave our families, our loved ones, our children, our grandchildren with our words, with our voice, with our intellectual property, with something that says, my great grandma did this, and here's evidence of that, or she wrote this, or, I always think about, I lost all four of my grandparents before I was 21. And it wasn't until I really became a young adult and was like, had a lot of questions just about life that I really wished that I had my grandparents to ask those questions. Um, and so I always like, man, if only if shoot if just one of them wrote a book or made an audio book or something that I can go back to take heed to that wisdom, I would have been so appreciative. So I look at just that longing that I had with them, as one of the reasons why I push so hard for us as a people to leave things in writing. um, so yeah, so how can I support you? If you are in a position where you want to write a book or know you want to publish a book eventually, but you're not necessarily at the publishing stage yet because you're still working, I offer a writing support, which is right now we have a writing collective. And so we just kind of kicked off the first cohort this month. Um, and so the doors closed on that on yesterday. But they open back up for May. And so the Writing Collective is really just a group of people, a group of Black writers who have things to say. And so I'm going to share um, my tab here. And so it's specifically designed for the words that have not been written yet. So it's a sacred collective of Black writers who have something to say. They have expertise to share, they have advice to give, they have stories to tell. And so basically, this cohort is really helping to clear out those thoughts, those things that are on our mind, those words that have not been written, but it's also a total body experience. So we're tapping into the mind, the body, and the spirit while using writing as that gateway. And so in this particular writing collective, it's not just all about the book. It's about how this book is going to not only change the audience who has an opportunity to read it, but it also is about how it's going to change the author as a person and how to prepare for that change on a mind, body, spiritual level. And so what I'll do is put in the chat, I'm just going to drop the links in the chat as I go so that if you want to look at it, take a moment to read it, you can. But ultimately, we meet um, every day. Actually, we meet every weekday, and it's not a mandatory meeting. It's one of those things where if you have time to get on and write collectively with the group, then you are here and present. And so we do what is called writing sprints. And the writing sprints gives us a specific amount of time every weekday evening to try to just push out as many words as we can, while we're working in community with each other so that we're not necessarily alone in the process. And we're also able to feed off of each other's energy, giving each other feedback, encouragement, and all of the things. Um, the writing collective is definitely one of the things that I am most proud of because I just truly enjoy, holding sacred space for people to be able to get it out, but also share how getting it out is how they're experiencing it, you know. Especially those who are writing personal narratives, memoirs, or novels that are written, based on true stories. We often find that, blockages in the writing process are not always just, oh, I'm like blocked creatively. Sometimes it's like spiritual blockages. It can be emotional blockages. It can be mental blockages. And so in that particular group, we hold space for that and we work through those other blockages that are, beyond just the writing itself. Okay. And so the next thing is if you're in a position where you're already the book is already written, and then you just want to know how to go about publishing. So I offer a strategy session option where you could just really book time with me to strategize your publishing process, where we can take where you're trying to go. I can take where you're trying to go in terms of your big goals and dreams as an author or as a publisher. If you decide that you want to publish books on a consistent basis, or you want to publish either other people, we would take time to just kind of strategize what that looks like from a business perspective. Because oftentimes people think when, I'm just self-publishing a book, it's just like, oh, I'm just putting my book out there. But once I put it out there, there's really no plan. And that's often because authors don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. But once you have a product in your hand, then now you're not just an author, you're an entrepreneur. You have something to sell, and it's up to you to be the one to sell it, especially if you're going the self-publishing or partner publishing route. And so this publishing strategy session is really just to map out what your business plan is and how to make it work for you and your current reality in the lifestyle that you have. Also, I have a self-publishing crash course that is coming up. I don't necessarily have a date for it just yet, but it's going to look like probably the first week of May, and also the first week of June. So I'll probably run it twice. And what that self-publishing crash course would look like is really a 2-day event in which we would probably do it on a weekend. And that crash course, I would take you through each step of the publishing process. And if you are in a position where you're ready to publish, we could actively do it together. So I'm going to teach you all the layers, from the legal aspects of self-publishing, the business structure aspects of self-publishing, the creating the team and getting your people together, your editing, your design team, your printing team, all of that, and or just doing it all yourself. We would take several hours to just kind of go through that process and actively put it in motion if you have material ready to do that. And so I'm going to offer that a couple times over the summer, with the first one starting next month, and I will be sending out information on that. And then the final option is just the full shebang, partner publishing, really just hiring me to do the legwork while you focus on just being an author. And what that looks like is we would have a discovery call where it just be you and I on the phone or over Zoom, and we would talk about just kind of where you are in your process. For partner publishing, you wouldn't come to me until the book is completely done. So that's one thing I just want to mention, like that. The book has to be completely done before we can work together, because there's nothing that I can really do if you're still writing. But once you get to that point and you're ready to just hand it over and have the process kind of laid out and the project managed by me and my team, then that would be what you reach out for in terms of partner publishing. Now, partner publishing is my high-end ticket client. Ticket service. So that comes with an investment that you would definitely have to be committed to. The other options, all of them are investments, obviously, but the partner publishing investment is a little more steep than the others. So if you are someone who's like a fast learner, or you can, it's not hard for you to pick up on something if you're trained to do it, then it'll probably be best to go the self-publishing crash course route. Or if you just need a seed planted and you can take it from there, the publishing strategy session might be the option that would be best suited for your needs. And then, I also have a book called Write the Book, Sis. So it's not for the brothers, but the brothers can read it. I have to just kind of go in and tweak some things so that they don't feel excluded. But Write the Book, Sis is a book that I wrote that you can find on Amazon. Just type in Write the Book, Sis. It's on Barnes and Noble. And it's a quick read, and an easy way to just get the information that you need to help you finish writing the book. If you one of those people who, you would rather work alone, you don't necessarily need to do the whole group collective thing. But if you feel like you need that support, you need that encouragement, you need that accountability. And that's the main thing. For the writing collective, we're in it for the accountability, because we know that if it ain't somebody, checking in on us on a regular basis, or we're not writing in community, the writing may not get done. So if you're one of those people who need to be held accountable, um, and I don't know, beat you over the head type of energy, but just being in a space where everyone working to a collective goal, then that would be the best option for you. So we are at the 52-minute mark, and I am going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you so much for tuning in to this particular webinar. So let me stop the recording, and then I will allow for questions.